Welcome to Her Time to Retire. I'm Jonathan Scott, your host today, and I am co-owner of Keystone Financial Resources. And this podcast was created so that we can speak with women who are at the top of their industry game and create a place where they can share their best ideas and advice with you, our listeners. So our guest today has some incredible wisdom to share with us on today's episode, and I'm talking with Gail Peace today. Glad to have you here, Gail.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little bio on Gail. Gail is a healthcare executive and entrepreneur with more than 25 years of healthcare industry experience, specifically in the technology space. Gail's the founder of Ludi Inc., that is a healthcare software solution company. Ludi's signature software, DocTime, was Gail's brainchild, and it's a platform that she developed in response to a significant yet unmet need that she identified during her years as a health system executive. Now, Gail's a member of an elite group of females who have raised both venture capital and private equity when less than 2% of these investments were awarded to female-led organizations elsewhere. So Gail has been recognized by Becker's Hospital Review as a female healthcare IT leader to know multiple times in that recognition. She's also named one of Nashville Business Journal's Women of Influence for 2021 and is part of the Nashville Healthcare Council Fellows Class of 2022. So Gail's an accomplished speaker, having presented at conferences all over the country. And again, it's such an honor to have her today. Thank you for being here, Gail. Now, when I'm looking at Gail and beginning into talking a little bit about Ludi, I remember, because Gail's been a long-term client of Keystone, when she came and told me that she had started Ludi and began telling me what her brainchild was. So elaborate on that a little bit. Tell us what gave you the idea, Gail.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. I was working in the hospital system, and my job always revolved around recruiting doctors and aligning with physicians and creating new services. And no matter what kind of contractual relationship we had with the doctor, it was usually 3 to 6 months, and they would be really angry. They weren't ever getting paid right. And so it was a whole process that didn't feel transparent to the physician. And so I just knew there was a better way to do it. From the hospital executive side, I wanted to know where I was spending money. Like, who were we aligning with? How much were we investing? What were those investments returning? And it was impossible, Jonathan. Half the payments went through payroll. The other half went through AP, and there was no database, no data to be able to pull. So I just had this idea to solve both of those problems for the doctor and also for the hospice.
Yeah, I could see that as being very lucrative for the physicians as well, because there's a lot of money lost in that process as well for them.
Yeah, and there was a trust issue. Physicians don't trust hospitals, and they felt like they weren't getting paid right, and they felt like you were doing something nefarious to not pay them. And it was a little bit of a weird circle. So I just knew by creating software that doctors use through an app. Right. In 2012, 2008 iPhones came out, and then the building of technology became way more scalable at that moment in time. So I knew I could build the software. Not being an engineer, I could figure out how to get that.
Oh, that seems far outside of my reach on building software, but I'm glad there's people out there that do it. But when I'm thinking about that, I remember that something that impressed me about you was in the very early stage. Well, multiple things impressed me, but in the very early stage with Ludi, you were already talking to me about exit strategy.
Yes.
And I thought, how cool is this? I mean, as she's building the business, she's already thinking about what's the exit strategy and what's that timeline look like. Who showed you to do that?
Well, I think you helped me with part of that. I always knew when I started the company that I would sell it someday. It was not something it wasn't to build it and hold it forever. And so I had the opportunity in working with you on the wealth management side to think about what are the tax implications? How do I structure even this business properly so that when I sell it, it's set up properly? So I did a lot of research in the early days throughout the running of the company. And then I would say 2 years before I sold, I really started working with people like yourself to understand, okay, what are the tax ramifications? What am I going to invest in? What does that look like? So I also spent a lot of time figuring out what my next move was, because everybody said you kind of are lost the day after you sell your company, you have no purpose. And I didn't want to be that person. So I spent a lot of time figuring out what is I call it Gail 3.0.
I remember you were pretty savvy in figuring out how to structure your business to be able to bypass some of the tax ramifications on the first several million on the sale. So that was really
Original
smart.
issue stock is very important. The 1202, if anybody's starting a technology company or any company, research 1202.
That was really savvy. So when you were working through all the semantics of setting the company up and getting the company profitable, which there's so much work in that area, I've been blessed to be a part of multiple startups in my lifetime. Our entire family is entrepreneurs.
Yes.
But that's usually some of the most tedious stage is getting it off the ground.
Yes.
And then, you need help as well in scaling. So a lot of people are good at getting it off the ground and getting it profitable, but they don't know how to go to that next stage. So tell me a little bit about how you were able to get it off the ground and then know how to scale it as well.
I think in looking back, I did most of the jobs myself. So anything administrative I held. So HR, finance, IT, purchasing, marketing. I kind of did every job in the beginning, and then I would bring people in, when I couldn't manage something. So really around client services in the beginning, I really ramped up our service, and I knew if we serviced it right, we could scale it. And so I've just learned along the way. I did partner with a venture capital firm here in Tennessee, in Nashville. And in 2014, I raised $1 million with them.
Wow.
And they offered me the ability to buy some finance from them, the accounting, and also some HR services, which really helped because I was trying to figure out, how do you buy insurance? How do you buy medical insurance? How do you, anything from personal insurance to insurance on the company? There's just a lot of pieces I had to learn. Another funny story. So I met you in 2016. I think we started 2017. So I moved here in June of 2016, and things were really tight. I had burned through the $1 million I'd raised, and we were profitable, but the timing of getting paid was tricky. And payroll happens every 2 weeks, as you know. And so I actually took a job at the Ryman Auditorium. I was an usher, 5 to 6 nights a week. I was like, nobody panic. The CEO has another job.
Right.
But I couldn't, one of the levers was I could change what my draw was out of the company. So that was one of the levers I had. So I needed to kind of just make ends meet. So I guess my answer is you're really scrappy and you just figure it out. And each day is learning something new.
Yep. Yeah. Oftentimes that's the grind that people talk about. So, so many likenesses to even starting Keystone Financial and getting it off the ground.
Absolutely.
When we first began, Glenn and I didn't take a check for a year and a half out of the business. We were out doing whatever we had to do, living out of savings, selling things off, whatever it took.
Credit cards.
Yeah, whatever it took to make it work. And oftentimes it was nitty gritty on making sure that payroll happened. But we never missed that. But it was a tough time during that time. And it sounds like you identified some key players in some areas that you didn't have expertise in, but you knew those were coming. You didn't run up on those areas and then discover, oh my gosh, I need somebody here. You were kind of like planning out ahead and saying, okay, we're going to put this key player in and this person for help as well. So it's good for people to recognize, what's involved, because a lot of times people will identify the problem and they'll say, there's a problem to be solved. I could create a business around this, solving this problem. And they'll start the business in, and then they'll have a whole lot of those, oh gosh, moments where they're like, oh gosh, what do I do here? Oh gosh, what do I do there? So it's really great to have those planned out in advance. And then again, that exit strategy is so key, to identify where is it exactly that we're going? What's profitable? Where are we going? What does that scale look like?
Right.
What are those goals? How far do I want to take this thing? And so you made some of those decisions early on. You could have taken it further, but I've seen a lot of people make that mistake before. I remember running into people right before the big economic fall in 2008. And they'll say, Jonathan, I had a deal put together and it was so sweet. But I was so thinking that the way things were rising and the way things were going, that I could hold out a little bit longer and it was going to be half again as big. And then the economy fell. And oh, I wished I had taken that sweetheart deal because I would have taken it right before the fall and we would have been great. So, how did you know, hey, at what point am I going to work a sale of this company? What's enough? Because we could keep growing on and on, but what made that decision for you?
Yeah, so I had been part of a couple technology companies, and I think there's some critical points in any business, and it's almost related to revenue. So somewhere around 3 million in revenue, your infrastructure has to change a lot. I see it happen at 5 million and then at 10. So my goal was to get to 10 million in annual recurring revenue, ARR. And because I ran a technology business, it was largely subscription based. And so that 10 million in ARR got the attention of the private equity markets.
For sure.
So I knew I needed to go to 10. And I also felt like, as you said this earlier, as the founder, I had vision and I took a lot of risk on the front end. And I knew I wasn't the right person to take it to 25 million. It will go to 25 million under the new leadership team. And they're doing great. And it's just a different team of people. They brought in the private equity firm that acquired the company, brought in a lot of capital, and they've doubled the size of the company. They've grown the revenue 40%.
Right.
They're taking different risks, calculated risks that they understand. And so I knew for me, that was my turn to get off the ride. I'm more of the founder side.
I love that.
Ways.
I love that. So, again, this is all going back to succession planning. So, I think for a lot of ladies that might be listening out there that may be business owners, I'm finding this again and again to be a common thread. So, I'm challenging people a lot to begin their succession planning and really determine what that looks like and when. And it causes a lot of questions to come up and a lot of planning opportunities as well. But it's so important to know. I spoke with a business owner last night who owns a really great company in Pennsylvania. If I said the company, everybody would know it. And he's really been having a lot of troubles with his business partner. And as I began speaking with him and talking with him in depth around it, he said, we didn't ever do a very good job on the succession planning. And we're at a point now where he won't buy me out. I haven't bought him out. We don't have any insurance or anything in between for any buy sells or any key man policies or anything like that. And he said, we're just kind of stuck. We're continuing to grow. The company's getting bigger. Everybody's doing their responsibilities, but we don't love working together. And he said, succession planning for me now is a little bit late because I don't have anything in play that would take care of just me on my side if the company were to no longer exist. And so for him, that was a real issue. And, for instance, in our company, we had to make decisions years ago. A lot of financial companies out there, their succession plan is to one day sell the book of business. Okay. Here we decided, hey, let's not do that at all. Let's build a company where younger advisors come in as well and keep building into perpetuity.
Right. And then you mentor them.
That's right. You mentor them and eventually share in the stock shares of the company. And so that's another type of succession planning. So there's lots of ways to plan this out. And it's an important thing, I think, a key thing in what you said was you decided what was enough. What was enough for Gail?
Right.
Gail decided, I could hire all these people. I could probably do another offering and raise more capital. But do I really want to do that? And it was my goal to manage all these Indians. And did I want to bring it to that level? She decided early on, no, I don't. This is where I want to get off the train and let someone else take that. That's so important. One of the things that Glenn and I decided early on was we said, what's enough? Because it's easy to get into the process and always be searching for more. And usually that takes you away from what's most important.
That's right. And you mentioned the partnership piece. So the good news, bad news is I did this alone. I didn't have any partners, so I didn't have to have those discussions. However, sitting down every year and getting crisp on what do I want and where is the market. Every year I did that in January. Where is the healthcare market? Where is the market? Where am I with what I want to do? And that's a good thing for the partners to do. Like, what do you each want? Because if you each want something different, it's going to create a problem.
Right. I love that. Well, along that line, as you were working through the day to day, how did you stay motivated? You know, there's always those times when you'll make the sales calls and things didn't come through. And there'll be all these opportunities that you were so excited about working towards, but it's the downside that people don't see when those didn't happen.
Yeah.
And you had to be motivated to go on to the next one. What was motivating you during those times?
I would say it's interesting. I'm coaching some business owners now, and one of them, we had this discussion the other day. You have to become so crisp that this is going to work. There's no other option.
Yep.
It is going to work. You just don't know. And so we're going to talk about my book, I'm sure, later, but the name of the book is No Shortcuts, because I felt like there was no shortcut. In building this business, there was never anything handed to me. It just didn't even seem like there was a good brick that ever fell my way. It felt like it was just all uphill. But I always knew that I had so much money invested in, so much time, and I knew the market needed it, and it was a good idea. So I was like, I just have to hold the faith. So to answer your question directly, I celebrated everything. When someone emailed me back, that was a celebration. I also held myself to 20 face-to-face visits a month for the first 3 years of my son, 20. So I had to do probably 200 to 300 emails at that time, or outreaches to people I knew, to get 20 face-to-face.
5 or 6 a week. That's terrific. That's a lot.
But that's what built the whole pipeline
For sure.
at work. And that's where I think, people underestimate really the sales side, how hard it is.
And I think that's a key as well in marketing of any kind for any company of any scale, is knowing how many people that you have to be in front of every single month to keep the wheels turning. So it's very, very important to know what that number is, regardless of what the business is.
Yes.
So that's super. Well, I know that that you're passionate about a lot of things. On the flip side, after the sale, and you realized a lot of truths, and you said, you know what, I want to actually do some outreach and allow some ladies to learn from this, young and old.
Right.
And I think that's so cool. I'm going to ask you about yours, but I'm going to liken it back to ours for a moment. In that, again, we're a part of something right now in her time to retire. It's a leg of Keystone Financial Resources, and it was created organically because we turned around one year and we realized, we've got an unconventional number of female entrepreneurs that are clients in our company. It's like we talked to lots of other financial investment firms, and there's very few that have this many female entrepreneurs. And it's just a blessing that took place. But we were able to ask some ladies why they thought that was, and it really led back to some personal stories. My mother is still here 2 days a week, and my mother was a female business owner, and I watched her become the breadwinner for our family. And she was really a hero during that time, but she ran into issues that her male counterpart did not. And so there were a lot of things that my mother was up against as she was building a business that her male counterparts did not see the same. And we recognized that in investment planning and the financial industry, there are things that the women run into as well that their male counterpart does not. And so oftentimes, we'll have couples that are together, and the husband will pass before the wife. And suddenly she's left, instead of 2 Social Securities at this point in her life, she's down to 1 Social Security. Or many times there was a pension involved, and now the pension went away and it's gone. Or they were filing jointly on the joint tax returns, and now it's singular filing on the tax returns. And there's not rarely an instance where the male is in that same scenario. And then so many times traditionally it was a male counterpart, if it's a couple, that led the way towards the financial planning, and the female really didn't engage in that, so they didn't know what to do. And there's a whole education process in that as well. And so this that we're a part of today was actually born out of a problem and
To solve it, yeah.
and a solution. And then it was actually furthered because we turned around and recognized, hey, there's an unusually large female clientele here, and they're business owners. And how could we create something where they would benefit one from another and be able to be a resource like in our name? And these people can say, hey, I want to go on and listen to this podcast because she's got some similarities to what I'm trying to do, and this is what she's done. So it's created this great community. Now, you were motivated to go out after the sale and write a book. And you told me a little bit about what was motivating you to travel around the country and talk to people. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I feel like what I would like to do is encourage more people, especially women, young women, to go into STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, math.
Okay.
So I feel like,
That's non-conventional.
right, I feel like
Yeah.
for women, my dad's a retired math professor, so this is important. But for women, they're not encouraged to take math and science past high
that?
school as much. But in that quest to do this and selling my company, I started volunteering and doing work at the college level, and I realized it's too late. So now I'm at the high school level. I'm the entrepreneur in residence at a high school out in Hendersonville, JP2, and it's fabulous. I'm working with freshmen through seniors on their business ideas. We run like a Shark Tank kind of thing through the whole year,
Love that.
which is really great. But what I noticed is that I think there's a couple reasons women stop taking math. One, maybe they're not encouraged, but secondly, young girls get very focused on their GPA
Okay.
to the extent that they don't take the harder classes, which is wrong.
I see that a
You
lot.
gotta stay with the math and science. And these young women will be crying in the hallway from a B, and I'm like, let me tell you a secret. I have 3 college degrees. I can't tell you a grade I got anywhere. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. Once you get in and you get your education, the grades are important, but it's not, we're so indoctrinated to be like, that's the only thing, right? It's not. It's getting the education. So now I'm motivated to help young women and other business owners. So I coach.
So these ladies will forego the knowledge to make the JBA.
Yeah, and then they end up in careers, and there's nothing wrong with, the arts and all of the different venues. But if you look at in technology specifically and software, we are so underrepresented. Women are so underrepresented.
So you talked about in that line, you said in your book that I think that the figure was something like 90% of the private equity was going to male-owned companies.
92.
92%. Okay. Why is that?
Well, I have a couple theories. I think perhaps the lens that we use to evaluate companies needs to change a little bit. And that sort of sunk in when I saw Kevin O'Leary speak, one of the sharks. And he's really, if you watch him, started to invest in primarily women-owned companies because he analyzed his own investments and found out the women-led companies did better.
We're the most successful.
Yes. And so his theory is that women underpromise and overdeliver.
Okay.
And the men companies he invested in, they came out with big numbers but didn't hit the numbers. So on one hand, Jonathan, I think women underestimate, and maybe whatever number you put out there you hit, and maybe it's not as big as they need in the financial markets. I also think women shy away from finance, and I didn't. I have an MBA in finance, so I understood how to tell the story with numbers.
I see. So presentation.
It is. It's understanding how to tell your story with numbers. You must apply the numbers to your story.
That's huge.
It is. And there's some young ladies I'm coaching now who are starting businesses, and I'll say, let's go over your business plan, and they don't even have one. I'm like,
Wow.
you don't start without a business.
So if I had to highlight anything in what you're saying, I know that to be true very solidly. And I've been coached on this, and I feel like a lot of ladies need to be coached on this. And whenever you're preparing that presentation, you have to monetize everything.
Everything.
Everything. And so if you can't make sense out of it from that perspective, then your male counterpart investor is not going to invest.
Right.
It has to be monetized. They have to clearly see what the return is going to be, why and when.
Right.
And as males, functioning from a primarily logical perspective, that's the numbers are very comfortable because we know the numbers don't lie. Yeah, you can be manipulated on the numbers, but typically math either adds up or it doesn't.
Right.
And so I think you've hit that on the nail head that a lot of times I will see my female counterpart, which controls retail. No doubt the female market controls retail altogether. But so many times, the reasoning in a presentation that I'll see as well will have a lot of emotion to it of what the reasoning was. And I'm always wondering where the math is to back it up.
Right. If you can't make the business model, the financial model work, then you don't have a business. So you need to spend a lot of time up front figuring out, okay, like when I built software, the first 2 years were only investing. The revenue was it paled in comparison to what was going out the door. I knew that. I knew, and I had a time frame, and I raised money correctly because I was able to get
Right.
the 747,
Who
we
knew?
call it, off the ground with the runway I had. But I made some tough decisions, and tough, like you said, you have to really control your costs, your sus, and
Yeah.
adjust what you can. And then we hit, I thought, okay, I'm really getting there. And then COVID hit.
Right.
I saw software to hospitals that doctors use. That was a screeching halt in 2 years for any new business.
Right.
So it was like, now what?
Really, really a tough time. But I so see what you're talking about in the presentations and things. So I think that's really, really a healthy perspective to say, don't trade off the math necessarily for the arts and the English. Do them all.
Do them all. Yeah.
Go and do them all because they're going to come in really handy on the flip side for sure. So, one of the last questions I wanted to talk to you about a little bit was in almost every podcast that we do, I like to hit on a point with each person that inside of any given day, we all do it. We're blessed to be able to make money at what we do, and that's terrific. But past the money, I think that we all have choices of, going out and make money multiple different ways. But past the money, what was it that motivated you to open Ludi and to push ultimately for a $10 million sales point where you were getting 10 million in gross revenue,
Right.
Recurring? What was the motivator? What was your it during that time? Well, outside of money, what was your it?
Yeah, there were two.
Okay.
One was I really do have a passion for physicians, and I'd spent my career working with physicians, and the way hospitals paid them was not appropriate, kind, made it too hard, too much red tape. So
For them.
I knew there was a problem to solve for the doctors, and that's why the app works really well, because it's built from a physician's perspective, and I watched how they worked. I gave them the app, I watched them. And then I changed it to work specifically for the lawyers. Yeah. So it was the first software they ever used that's about them getting paid, not about the hospital getting paid or somebody else getting paid. So that was really motivating. And then the second thing was I didn't clearly figure this out until I started writing my book, but I had a glass ceiling in healthcare leadership. And I was passed over for the next promotion. They kept jamming men in above me who didn't understand the job. I had to train them. And then they couldn't, I just got irritated. I was like, okay, I think I've hit as far as I'm going to go here. So there's a chapter in my book called I'm Done Working for the Dude. That motivated me to rest myself when we're working for the dude.
Done working for the dude. I love it. I love it.
So those two things.
Well, I'm tickled for you. It's been exciting. So, Gail mentioned her book, and she has written a book called No Shortcuts: One Woman's Journey from Startup to Successful Sale of a Multi-Million-Dollar Tech Company. So it's exciting. It's thicker than my book. It's but it still looks like an easy read. And I've gotten several chapters into it, but it's a great book. So check that out. I think you can get this on Amazon, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. And then we've got a really neat interview with Gail coming up where she's going to do a book signing and an interview session in Nashville and meet with a lot of lady business owners and things. And there are still some seats available for that right now. And so that's Tuesday, July the 22nd at 5 p.m. And that's out at the Williamson County Enrichment Center here in Franklin. So that's exciting to be a part of as well. So we're going to get to visit with Gail a little bit more during that time. And I won't be interviewing you, but I know the lady that is, and it's going to be exciting as well.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. It's going to be great.
Yeah, well, we're excited for you. And as usual, hope you guys get a chance to listen to this podcast Listen to the others as well on Her Time to Retire and on our website, KeystoneFinancialResources.com. And you can reach us either there at KeystoneFinancialResources.com or give us a call at 615-661-9554. Thank you.
You have been listening to Her Time to Retire with Glenn Price and Jonathan Scott. Glenn and Jonathan would love to talk to you and answer any of your retirement questions. All listeners can take advantage of a free 15-minute consultation with Glenn and Jonathan, whether via a phone call, Zoom meeting, or in person. You can schedule your consultation by calling 615-661-9554 or by visiting our website at www.keystonefinancialresources.com. Thanks for listening. The opinions expressed by Keystone Financial Resources and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, LLC, or BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Keystone Financial Resources are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM, but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.